Hi, so this video is going to be like a story time video. No, it is a story time video. And it's about this time, an out of town overnight shoot and like what that whole thing was about. But first, I'm going to adjust my camera because this background is not symmetrical and that's bothering me. So this video is about an out-of-town overnight shoot that I did last year in April. It was really fun, but like also like weird things happened, which I'm sure weird things happen on a lot of sets, but in this short film I was a featured extra, and in this like future society you could like go on vacations or like day trips to the past, and you'd have like a tour guide. You would go to the past and you would tour wherever you were going. And so as a featured extra, I was one of the other tourists who was going to visit the past. It was completely written, run, crewed, acted, like everyone was students. So as students, we were also in school for the majority of the week. So all of our shoots happened over the weekend, and all of our shoots were overnight shoots, I think, except for one. And we filmed over the course of 3 weekends. The first shoot, I think, was a regular day shoot, and we filmed for the majority of the day. And then the other 2 were overnight shoots. But the last shoot was supposed to be like, oh, this is where they went to vacation, and it was set in Atlanta. So we had to go to Atlanta for our last weekend of the shoot. So for the overnight shoot day, we were supposed to meet at the place at 8 a.m. or before at 7:30, and we were leaving at 8 a.m. sharp. And there were a couple of us who were in like this like bus van situation. I don't know what it was. And there were a couple of us who were riding that because I didn't have a car. Some other people didn't have a car, or they didn't want to drive. And it's crooked now. A bunch of a couple of us that were riding the bus van thing, we got there and were waiting, and then there was one other person who was supposed to be riding with us, but she hadn't arrived yet, and we had to leave at 8 a.m. sharp because we had to get there. We had to get to the Atlanta campus because they had reserved a section, a room in this area at the Atlanta campus to film, and they only had a certain amount of time that they had that room for. We needed to get there so that the people who were filming, they could be there in time to do the thing. Calling and texting her to be like, where are you? Come on, we're about to leave. Like, what's happening? And she's not answering, she's not responding. And then we have to get on the bus and go. And then like as soon as we leave is when she responded. Like I think the DP was one of the people who was with us, and the girl was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I overslept, my alarm didn't go off, and so then they were figuring out how she could get to Atlanta because we had already left. Not everyone rode the bus. There were many people who were driving who hadn't left yet because they had other things that they had to do during the day. Like one of the guys who was a featured extra had to go to work, and then he was gonna leave later in the afternoon because our shoot was overnight and we weren't called until like 11 or something at night. So there was time for us. Like we were not the people who were gonna be filming when we got to Atlanta. It was the lead, and the crew needed to be there, and the equipment needed to be there because there was equipment that was with us in the back of the bus van thing. So they're calling and texting, and they had a couple of us like, oh, if you know people who are still here who are going to be going to the set. Eventually they found one of the people who hadn't left yet, who's like, oh, I can bring her. I'll pick her up right after work. She needs to be packed and ready so we can leave immediately. And they were like, cool. So that fire was like put out, which was great because I was like, none of this involved me. It was a small bus van thing, and the DP was sitting right in front of me, and she was like on the phone with people and texting and and I was like experiencing secondhand anxiety from her like trying to figure out like what to do, because then there was like this moment where they were like, well, if no one can bring her to Atlanta, how was that gonna affect everything, because we'd already filmed scenes that she was in, and then if she couldn't get to Atlanta and now she wasn't in those scenes, it got hectic internally for like a moment. But anyways, that whole thing got resolved. The rest of the ride there was pretty chill. I tried so hard to do like work while I was on the bus, and I failed. But yeah, so we pretty much did like a straight shot there. We stopped once like at the halfway point to use the bathrooms and grab some food so that we could eat. And then we got to the Atlanta campus a little bit after noon. Everyone else on the bus had been like crew and was needed and had to go straight to set. I mean, we all went to set together because they had to start working. And then me and the one other featured extra who was also on the bus, we weren't needed and weren't doing anything. And then they decided to add one of the extras in the background of whatever the scene was that they were shooting. And so they grabbed my friend, and I was just hanging out, and I was on my computer writing and reading and stuff. And originally they were going to send me to the hotel, but it wasn't ready yet, or someone hadn't picked up the keys or something. Mother! Is she not going to open the door? I just heard her outside my door, and she didn't come in to say hi. Airways, they had the crafty table out, so I was snacking for sure. Then eventually someone came and got me, and they were like, we got the hotel, and so then they brought me and dropped me off at the hotel. So then night comes, and I get ready, and we all head over to the place where we were filming. And this time, what we were filming was outside. It was in this little square near one of the MARTA stations in Midtown. Like I've said a million times, we were filming overnight. We filmed for 2 nights. We're in Midtown in Atlanta, and there's a bunch of restaurants and bars right around all over the place. So there were a couple of, and like where we were filming, because we were a small crew, we had permission to film there, but we weren't allowed to block off any of the areas. So so every time people wanted to cross by, we had to hold, or like if cars started, I mean the cars were fine, but there were times when it was like a whole bunch of cars would pass by and it would get really loud. So we had to keep cutting and holding. And like most people were really chill. Like where we were, it was between 2 buildings. There were PAs who were at the corners of the buildings on the sidewalks, and they would like hold people and be like, oh, we're filming over here, can you just wait 1 second, you know, while they finish, and then you can pass right on by. It'll just be like 1 second. The PAs were being super polite, they were really chill about it, and most of the people would be like, oh yeah, sure, that's totally fine. And they'd be like, oh, were you guys filming over there? Like what they were pretty awesome about it. And then you had like some really rude people who would just be like, oh my gosh, there was this one couple of people, this lady and this man, and she was just like, I mean both of them, but they were both being really rude about the whole situation, but she was just like going out of her way to be rude, and she was yelling about like how they can't block her from crossing the side, like walking down the sidewalk, and it was really ridiculous. Like you would have thought that like someone was being like, I don't even know. Like it was just like asking her to just wait 1 moment while we film, and it wasn't even like a long scene we were filming. Just like it was the biggest inconvenience for her to wait just a couple of seconds, and it was Oh my gosh, so that person was really rude, and she was like no, and like burst past the PA and was like walking and being all loud and stuff, and oh my gosh, just I was like, why is this white lady just being so rude? And then you had other people who were drunk and wandering around, and you could hear them yelling wherever they were. So like there were two specific instances that popped out. So like I said before, the layout was we were in this little square, and there were buildings, tall buildings on either side of us. And then there was a sidewalk and the street in front of us, but behind us was a dead end street. So, cause like there was like some sort of museum or whatever was on this side of us. If you were coming from behind us, there were a lot of cars would pop up, so they would come because people would get dropped off or picked up there, and so that all the headlights would just be flashing down the street right at us, or because we filmed both ways. So first we were filming where the cameras were facing the street, so we had to worry about all these people in the background crossing, and then we were filming where this street was in the background, and it was a dead end, and you would have the cars would come and people would get out, and then they would U-turn and leave. But every time it didn't happen, I mean it happened a lot, but it wasn't like ridiculous. But every time it happened, we would have to cut because you could see it in the background a little bit. You didn't even always see the car or the people, but you would see the headlights, and the headlights would just shine on us and just like ruin the lighting and everything. So that was a thing that kept happening. It was a small crew, so there was only so many people. So sometimes, and you had people who were coming from the sidewalk up here this way and the sidewalk up here this way, and then there was the sidewalks in the street behind us, and people would sometimes get around us, and then they would just be walking through, and they like didn't realize they were doing anything wrong. They just like no one caught them to stop them. Atlanta had a bunch of scooters everywhere. People would be like on the scooters, and so sometimes they're going too fast for you to be like, oh wait, stop. Oh, there was this really rude drunk guy who came by, and because there was in the building on this side there was a restaurant right at the bottom of it, and the entrance was right there. But this drunk guy came out of the restaurant, and I knew he could see us filming there for however long he had been in there, because the restaurant was all glass windows, and he came out yelling at us just like the most random things, and then he was like being vulgar on purpose. He was like yelling curse words at us, purposefully trying to ruin the shot. It wasn't like he was just like drunk and unaware. He was drunk and he was purposefully trying to mess us up and like ruin what we were doing, because he was just a jerk. And he like walked towards our film set and he kept screaming stuff. The majority of the cast was girls, and he was like yelling stuff at us, and like the crew was also like, I don't know, it was pretty like even, I guess, with like the ratio of girls to guys. I think there were a couple more guys, but there was a good amount of girls too, and he was yelling things at people, and a bunch of guys were like, you need to get, they were like, and he was, cause the dude, he was a big guy as well. He was like, you couldn't just do whatever, and he was like coming at us like he was gonna do something, and these dudes came out of the crew came out and were like blocking him, and were like, you need to, like, and they were talking to his friend like, you need to get your friend and go because he's being ridiculous. And then his friend like dragged him away, but like the whole time he was just yelling and yelling as loud as he could so he could ruin the shots that we were doing. And so that was ridiculous, and this whole thing was happening for like several minutes, so that was like something that we had to deal with, which was so rude and annoying. We're all asleep. It's the middle of the night, and we wake up to the alarms of the hotel going off and the flashing lights. That was crazy. to see, because it's like pitch black in the room. All the lights, it was night outside. All the lights are off, all the curtains are drawn to keep out any light from the lamp posts, but like it was pitch black in the room, and there's just like this white flashing, and there's this alarm going off, and there's this voice that's going, I can't even do the voice, and it was talking, and it was like the alarm, like there's an emergency going on, please exit the building or whatever. But it's like this robotic woman's voice, and it sounds like that voice, the voice from The Purge, you know? There's a gnat. I did not kill it. I think there's no blood on my hands, so it must still be alive. But that voice from The Purge, when they're like, oh, they have 24 hours to do, like, that's what this alarm voice sounded like. So that was terrifying to wake up to, by the way. And we wake up, and I have no idea what's going on. But for some reason, the first thing that popped into my head was like, oh, there's a gas leak. It's a gas leak. That's why the alarm is going off. So I hold my breath, and I'm trying to find my shoes to like slide on my feet. And stupid me, when I was packing, I was like most concerned about getting my costume and stuff, and like making sure I had all the accessories and stuff that went with it. I didn't pack like as much things as I should have. I only had my heels that I was wearing in for the scene, and some Converse that were all tied up because I was so tired that I just kicked them off my feet, and I didn't want to walk outside barefoot, so I'm trying to untie my shoes real quick in this pitch black. And then my other two roommates get up, and one of them turns on the light, and they're like, what's going on? And we're like, we don't know. And I am trying to get my shoes, make sure I have my hotel key card, my wallet, my student ID chain. I'm still getting on my shoes. They leave, and I finally got my shoes on, and I left, and we go outside, and everyone from the hotel is leaving. The people from the crew who had the equipment in their room are bringing equipment outside, and I'm just like, what is going on? My friend from upstairs, and she was in the room with two other people. They get outside, they're like, a pipe burst in the hotel and flooded multiple floors. She said that she woke up to the alarm and turned to get out of the bed, and her feet went into several inches of water. So several feet up on multiple floors, they're just flooded. First of all, she was like freaking out just because this was a weird situation to be woken up into. And then also, she was like, all my stuff was sitting on the floor. And she was like worried about her bag that had all of her like school notes and everything. And then the girl who she was rooming with, she was like, my computer was sitting on the floor. And so she's like, she couldn't remember. She's like, was it on the floor? I can't like, so she's worried about that. There were people who were on the floors that flooded, who had the film equipment that was stacked up on the floor. So they're going back and forth into the hotel, moving out the equipment as quickly as possible to make sure it doesn't get damaged. And it wasn't just like regular water either that was flooding. I mean, it was clean. Like, it wasn't like poo water, but it was water it was hot water. The water that comes from the boiler. So the water was like steaming. It was so hot. And so people were like getting these steam burns or whatever. I think that's what they're called. It was just weird. And then people were also freaking out because they were like didn't want to get electrocuted, because there's like several inches of water on the floor, but there's also like exposed outlets and things are plugged in that are touching the water. So it was like a hot mess of things that was just, it was just so weird. It was so weird. And so we're outside. I don't remember for how long. We're all dead tired, but it was the first night. So we had woken up, all of us had woken up early, had left, And then some of the people were at set for that first scene, but we were all awake the whole day. And then we went straight into the overnight shoot, and then we were asleep for maybe a couple of hours, and then the alarms of the hotel start going off. So people were like curling up in blankets and going to sleep outside. I guess they turned off the water. The fire department was there. There was police everywhere. It was ridiculous. And I have no idea why I thought it was a gas leak. What was that? The certain floors that were unaffected, they were like, okay, you can go back to your rooms. And because we were on the first floor, we didn't get any flooding. And so we didn't even know what was happening until we got outside and people told us. So we're going back inside. The hallway on the first floor to it's like the carpet is squishy because water is leaking down the staircase onto the other floors. The staircase was across from our room, and we go to open it, and it's like we just entered a sauna. You can just see all this water just raining down it was so weird. Just water and water raining down the stairs. It's pooling everywhere, and there's so much steam, and it was like hot. The water was hot, and you could feel it. So then we go back into our room, and we eventually get back to sleep, and then the next day we wake up. I mean, we didn't wake up at like 7 a.m. in the morning or whatever, but we woke up early enough where we could spend our day doing whatever we wanted. My friend, all of her things were like soaking wet, like her clothes, everything was drenched, and so she didn't have any clothes to wear the next day. So we were like, oh, there's a Target that's like nearby. So we decided to make a day of it, and a group of us, we all went to Target, and we went and got lunch, and we walked around Atlantic Station for a little bit. There was I think it was the Dogwood Festival. I think that's what the festival was at Piedmont Park. So we go there, and we're wandering around looking at all the art. We didn't get any food there, I don't think, because all the lines were long and none of us wanted to spend that money. And while we're walking through the park, guess who I run into? My best friend, who I had been texting like the whole week prior, and I was gonna be like, I'm gonna be in Atlanta, we need to like try to visit each other. And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, just let me know, I'll see what I can do, because she's also in school and she was also like working and stuff. I'm walking, and I just glanced over, and I was like, wait a second, that's a white person I know. And I run over there, but yeah, and I run over there, and I was like, Hannah. I don't want to scream because I've been talking a lot, and I'm also a little bit dehydrated, so my voice is not. And she runs into me, and she was like, oh my gosh, I was literally just texting you to ask if you wanted to come to the Dogwood Festival, and her mom was there, and her dad, and her sister, and I got to hug all of them and say hi. And then we were talking for a bit and hanging out. I had to leave to go get ready to go be on set on time. We got back to Savannah, and that was that adventure. I forgot to film an outro, but thank you. Oh, my door is open. I forgot to film an outro, but thank you for watching. You can follow me and or my cats on Instagram. You can also check out my blog where I post personal essays, movie and book reviews, a bunch of other things. All the links are going to be down all of the links are going to be down in the description. Thank you for watching. Bye.